Kia ora, g'day, welcome back once again, here with some more Q&A. I'll look to scroll through these, and also there is a bunch of comments, questions that are not showing in this part of my YouTube studio. Again, I've mentioned this before, I don't know why. I haven't changed any of the settings. I've gone back and checked the settings. The settings are what they originally were, but for whatever reason, there's a bunch of comments, questions and stuff that I'm likely missing, because I won't see them until I go into my actual YouTube channel, not in the studio, and then click on the little bell and then scroll down for ages. So I apologize to anybody else that may be missed in what I'm about to go through here, and the questions that you may have been, or that you may have asked already and have not received a reply. That's not because I'm ignoring them. But anyway, I'll jump into these and we'll see how we go. I'll try and get through as many as I can. They're probably just more comments, and I think there are some with questions, so we'll try and get to those. Shiny Happy Shebus 1385. Oh yeah, so this is from the Q&A, what I've passed, UKSF or Navy SEAL selection. Thanks for your comments, bro. Appreciate it. Yeah, again, I don't know, like I said in the video. I'm going to back myself though, in response to the query and the question that I was asked about that video. This one here is from @Dr. Ian Plecht, @Dr.Ian- or -Plecht. Haven't heard from this fella for a while. It's got, hello Joe, listening to this raised some questions for you. Should you like to answer them? Thanks. Okay. 1. This will have two aspects, then and answering in the present. If you have chosen to do UKSF selection, would have wanted to join 2-2 or the SBS? I would have wanted to join 2-2. I didn't know anything about the SBS until there was a guy from 2-2, a guy from SBS, and a couple of guys from SASR that had come over to NZ, and they were doing the New Zealand NZSAS run or lead trackers course. And for that course, I wasn't a student. I was part of the enemy party for that particular course. And so that was when I had first heard about the Special Boat Service. So yeah, I would have chosen 2-2 had I gone through that. Perhaps you didn't know much about, perhaps you didn't know much about the SBS at the time, and so they may not have been on your radar at all. Yeah, that's right, they weren't. Or perhaps the allure of 2-2 as the ancestor of the other units, of the other SAS units, would have swung it for 2-2. Yeah, like I said, 2-2 was the only one that was on my radar, aside from obviously NZ Australia and 2-2. Anyway, that's asking your view at the time. Yep, that's my view at the time. And also, would that choice have changed from your viewpoint today? No. Even today, it wouldn't have changed. I would have, 2-2 was where I would have wanted to go. Wouldn't have changed. By the way, candidates get to choose 2-2 or SBS before selection starts. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't know that, so thanks for that. Part 2, I haven't heard you actually address why it was you completed NZ selection but didn't actually get badged. Oh, okay. And therefore presumably did not actually serve in that unit. Yep, that's correct. I've mentioned that. So I didn't go on to serve as an operator because I wasn't badged in the NZ unit. What went on there? I mean, it was a few years gap, brackets, wasn't it, between NZ and Oz selection? Yeah, couple of years, 2-3 years gap. So I already did a video about that. I've replied to Dr. Ian Plecht and sent him the link. That was the video around how I almost went to jail, where basically I talk about everything in there, so I won't worry about rehashing all of that in there. But if you see this, Dr. Ian Plecht, that should hopefully give you enough of an answer. So went through the selection, completed the cycle, everything's explained in that video. But yeah, life happens. I made a silly decision, got into a fight, and the rest is history. Come down, @David Dawson 8127. Hi Joe. All right, thanks mate. Positive, kind words again. Appreciate you. This part, I'm with you, Joe, and whoever wants to serve with the SAS in another country should go through their specific selection process. Yeah, that's my take, in terms of the video and the question that I was asked. I think that's what should happen, regardless of where you come from, regardless of whether you are the founders of the SAS, like your country, that is. I think if you were wanting to go to another country and join the SF unit, my take is go through their selection process and go through the same door that everybody else has been through to get into that unit. You've got here UK, NZ and Australia all have different selection processes with different levels of fitness and for their tasks. Yeah, different activities, some different tests. The 3.2 is a bit of a bit of a shock to the system, bit of a different test in Australia. And just, yeah, the duration of the selections, some of the activities and tasks. Yeah, I think there's a number of similarities, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it is very different. So you've got here, given that they should all be competent and successful in those selection processes. David, former UK RAMC. I appreciate you, bro. Thank you. Addie's Thoughts. This one's at Addie's Thoughts 3253. Question. Is the reserve element of SASR called 5 Squadron? And how does the reserve SF element work in Australia/New Zealand? What I will say is, it wasn't, as far as I'm aware, it wasn't called 5 Squadron when I was still in the unit over in SASR. So that's what I'll say about that one. Just call it the SAS Reserve. That's what we'll call it. How does the Reserve SF element work in Australia and New Zealand? By work, I'm not sure what you mean by that question. How does it work? If you mean what do they do, my understanding, because I never chose or opted to go reserve. When I left and discharged, I got out completely. Hey, they might not have even allowed me or wanted me to go into the reserve anyway. So with that, my understanding is they can help out, or they'll help out on selection courses. They can, have access to and may get some training in on different courses and stuff that may come up. But they're, bear in mind they're a reserve, so they're doing other things presumably as full-time in their civilian life. And then as and where and if they're available, and if the regiment has, I guess, spots or places available, and or if they need and want to put out a call to reserve guys, former full-time badged operators, still badged but in the reserve unit, and want to ask them if they can come and help out, then I'm assuming that they would reach out to them and ask them to come and assist. I recall from my cycle in NZ, we had some SASTF reserve operators that were helping out on the patrol procedures course, or that were at least involved in and around. They weren't doing patrol commander stuff, but they were there assisting and I suppose watching us and taking notes on how we were going during the patrol procedures portion of the cycle. They weren't out there during the final exercise and the testing phase exercise, but they were with us and in and around us and taking us through bits and pieces and lessons and training in the lead up to that final exercise. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight. Yeah, that's my limited understanding of the reserve SF elements for Australia and New Zealand. Take what I say with a pinch of salt, may be completely wrong. How are we going for time? Yeah. At MySoap23, hey Joe, a couple of questions for you. Did badge members trying out in another selection come under higher scrutiny to perform, with the idea that DS likely knew they were a member of another SF unit? I'll be honest, I'll speak to my experience and then I'll share, without sharing the names of other individuals that I've spoken to, of what they've shared with me. So my experience when I went, not that I was a badged member in NZ, but I had, I'd almost made it. When I went to Australia, yep, the staff and the staff, or at least the senior staff, were aware that I had come over having completed the NZ selection and cycle. I didn't come under any high scrutiny. I didn't think so. And I've shared this before in other videos. Yep, they made me sing the bloody national anthem, the Australian national anthem, both verses, which I still know to this day. And I'm proud of that. I got no issue with that. But I didn't know it beforehand and I had to learn it. So had to do a haka. I performed the haka during selection, during the lucky dip phase, when you're pretty weak and feeble by then as well, and trying to get that mana into the haka. But thankfully, I also had the support of the team that I was with. Thanks to Nick Caldwell, who made the offering for them, those that were left in our team, and they joined in behind the Aussie lads who likely had never performed the haka. They backed me up, man, and that was a surprise. I was happy to do it on my own. But the fact that they joined in and they just copied as best they could, and yelled and made noises in the background. Man, it was uplifting for me anyway. So I don't think there was any higher scrutiny. That being said, other guys that I've spoken to that have gone over, they said the same thing. They never felt like they were being given any extra special attention. And I think that's a testament to the professionalism of and the conduct of the selections. Like the directing staff know that the selection is going to be brutal and hard regardless, and they don't. I think that they're more than smart enough to realise and know that they don't need to give any extra special attention, whether you've come over as a badge member from another unit or not. You are still going to find it miserable and hard and challenging and difficult, as all selections are. So it's that one. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong. You may have mentioned that you weren't best at or didn't like schooling. Yep, 100%. I was literally one of those that just liked to go and play sport, hang out with my mates. And if I had some money, buy some junk food. How did you deal with the academic/theory side during both the NZ and Aussie training cycles, as in being able to take in information, retain it, and put it into practice, etc.? Well, I think a couple of things to that. One that stands out is that it's something that I actually wanted to do. So anything, I think the same for anybody, anything that you and I, or we actually want to do, I think we're locked into it, and we're better able to absorb that information. I think at least that's the case in my situation. And then I also had the other part of that is that I had awesome, not only great instructors, but also good peers that if I was unsure, I could ask and get help with. So when I was still getting better at my navigation, as an example, I could ask corporals, other privates, officers on my cycle in NZ, as an example, and they helped. Bill Bestick was a great help. He was a captain, I think. Second lieutenant or captain? I think he was a captain. He helped me with navigation. I had NCOs that helped, observing and paying attention to what they're doing. I had instructors, so the demolitions and the academic theory part and the calculations portion of it. Yep, I was struggling with those, but I was keen. Like I knew that this was part of the job, and that if I wanted to be able to do this job and do it well, that I needed to learn the stuff and that I needed to be able to implement it. And so, yeah, you just become and get proactive, and you ask questions, or at least I did anyway. But also I had great instructors who were willing to take the time and help out. So during the cycle, they would hang back and help us. My recollection of a number of those instructors in that anyway, stay back and help us and help us get the calculations and stuff correct and the formula to use in order to be able to work out exactly how much we needed for a specific task. So yeah, that's what happened for me. That's my take on how I was able to sort of drag my way through it. At Tom Logan 5037, great video, Joe. This is the could I have passed the UKSF Navy SEALs one. This one, oh yeah, there's a bit on here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you and or perhaps other SAS members develop that unique mindset of unbreakable mental resilience, courage, self-belief, and constant drive to avoid complacency. That's a cool question. Is that something built through experience and training, or do you think it's an innate trait that only some people naturally have? I'd really like to learn how to emulate those SAS qualities myself to be better in my own day-to-day. Wow, it's probably a big... I'll do my best to try to give a blurb here. Do I think... So you've got here... Is that something built through experience and training? I think it can be built through experience and training, and that experience and training can come in a lot of different shapes and forms. For me, developing a strong mindset, having resilience, courage, and self-belief, those aspects of that first part of your comment, I think I learnt that before I joined the Army, thanks to my mum, and thanks to the work ethic and the example that she set for me. She was up. My earliest recollection of her whilst I was still in primary school, her being a single mum and getting up early, leaving me at home, and me looking at her out the window, foggy early morning, and her walking to work. Got her clothes on. She even had the balaclava on with just the thing because it was cold in the mornings, and she would walk to work from where we were on Edison Street in Kaiti, Gisborne, or aka the Bronx in Gisborne, and then walking basically towards the city, to Watties, where the Watties factory was, or the canned food and all that sort of stuff. She walked there, did that job, would walk back home. Oftentimes she was working 2, sometimes 3 jobs. So she had another job at the Town Clock Burger Bar, which was like a fast food place. She did cleaning jobs, and she had her main job, which was at Waddies. So I saw and still never fully comprehended or appreciated the fact of where the money was coming from, where my clothes were coming from, where the food was coming from, how I was able to get to school, etc. And then when we eventually had a car, even though the cars that we had, in my opinion, they were real ugly looking things, putter bombs we would call them, or I would call our one. But you know, that's where I learnt it. I observed it there through my mum's example and the hard work. Then she forced me into work, which is good. Actually, before that, she forced me into self-defense, into karate, into a Japanese-style martial art. Okinawa Goju-Ryu was the name of that particular martial art at the time. Lots of good memories of that, even though I didn't want to do it, but she forced me to do that. Then she forced me into work, and I'm grateful for that, eh? Like, if I could have had my way, I would have said, nah, I just want to go play sports, hang out with my friends. My mum said to me from a very early age that she didn't want me just being a labourer. She wanted me to try to use my brain, not that I was using my brain, and she wanted me to try to create a better future for myself and or for eventually my family, should I be blessed enough to have a family. So that's where I learnt those things, that mindset, resilience, courage, and self-belief, because I wasn't keen on working. I didn't like a lot of the work that my mum made me do because it was hard. And so her constant and unrelenting pushing of me to do that work and telling me, basically stop whinging, moaning, stop complaining, you can do this, just carry on. I then learned and developed, I can do this. So that's where I got that. So I think that can be built through experience and training. I think that can be developed and built anywhere. Or do you think it's an innate trait? Well, for me, it definitely wasn't a natural, inherent ability or trait of mine. It's something, as I mentioned, I learned through those examples, and then pushing myself with training. Once I decided that I was going to join the army, I knew I needed to get fitter. So that meant, I needed to do some extra work and training, not just play sports, but do some extra fitness and stuff on top of that. Even then, I wasn't anything special when it came to fitness, but I did enough to be able to get in. Once I got into the army, man, things felt pretty easy. Like, there were some hard things in terms of just me picking up and learning things, but I loved it again, and it's where I wanted to be. So I think I quickly was able to pick up the information that was required, that I needed to get, that I needed to understand and to be able to apply, which enabled me to go on and serve as a soldier. So I'd really like to learn how to emulate those SAS qualities myself to be better in my own day-to-day. Hopefully what I've just shared there, you've probably already done a whole bunch of stuff that has helped you in some way, shape or form, and or prepared you. Like, I think that's true of anyone and everyone, just through your upbringing and life experiences and work, etc., etc. So yeah, hopefully my little rant there gives some sort of, well, not rant, my bloody babblings is more like it. Hopefully that gives some sort of indication or information in and around responses to your question. Avoiding complacency, I think that's the other part of your question, which I didn't answer. I think that's I think everybody is complacent at times, even when you're an operator in the unit. Or I think it's probably viewed as complacency if something goes wrong, but probably it's more like I've heard the term unconscious competence. So you're doing things unconsciously because you're very, very proficient at it. And typically it may only be viewed as complacency if and when something goes wrong. Oh, no, they were complacent or they were thinking about something else. But my little babblings for this piece here, when I talk about that unconscious competence, that's in regards to, like, the easiest example that I could use is driving. Learning how to drive, everything's overwhelming. I'm trying to take in everything. What do I do first? Do I hop in and put my seatbelt on before I put the key in? Do I put the key in, then hop in, then put my seatbelt on? All the different checks and whatever that you have going on. Reverse parallel parking, trying to take in everything, sort of sensory overload. then all of a sudden things just click. It may not be as so overloading for those that are learning to drive on automatics, but I know for me, learning to drive on a manual, and grateful that I have, and that, driving a manual is well, I enjoy it, even though we have an automatic car these days. That all that information, that was a heck of a lot to take in. But then all of a sudden, you get enough reps and practice in, and you make enough mistakes, and you bunny hop a few times, and you quickly learn how to navigate and deal with all of that, stalling a vehicle, how to, oh yeah, that's okay, just restart it and crack back on. Things eventually become and get to a stage where you feel pretty comfortable and competent at it. And then all of a sudden you're not thinking about all those steps. They're just naturally happening. So avoiding complacency, I think in the unit or soldiers in general, you develop through all that training that you're building up and the experience and exposure. You're developing all these skills, and you probably get to a point where it's where I've heard it. I didn't come up with this, but I've heard, and I can't remember where I heard it from, but that unconscious competence. And it can be viewed as complacency if something goes wrong. So anyway, that's just one example. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll move on to these next questions. Where do we? Yep. Paul Mac, great questions. That's from Paul McKenzie, 5526. He's got here just great questions in regards to the Q&A one. Oh, this is Pete Hegseth's speech. So I think the final reaction that went up. Comment in here at GRAGRN. That was the best speech I've ever heard. Pete almost had me up and doing jumping jacks and burpees before he had finished. Awesome. All right. What have we got here? At Jack the Lad 325. Here we go. Oh, there's a bit in this one. This might be the last one, so we'll see how we go, because it's probably going to go. It's 22 minutes now. But anyway, this is in response to, could I have passed the UK SF or Navy SEALs selection? At Jack the Lad 325, appreciate your time. He's somebody that stops by the channel from what I've seen, leaves comments from time to time, so thank you. Always an interesting question. I think over the decades, standards for all armies have changed. Yep. Yeah, there's definitely been some, I'd say, modifications and improvements in likely standards, as much as they may not want to. SF, in the SAS and that anyway, I don't know how often or how much those have changed. They seem to be fairly consistent as my observation and understanding of those units anyway. And for good reason, because they're tried, tested, and they're proven. When it comes to the nature of the work within those units, that's where I think there may be much more improvements, development, changes, etc., as opposed to the actual selection processes themselves. But I could be wrong. When you look at the Foreign Legion units from the Indochina War, quite a number of them, even the paras of that epoch, would not have passed Legion selection in the 1990s. Yeah, I don't know. If that's, hey, that's your take, eh? Like, maybe. I don't know. I don't know much about the Indochina or the Foreign Legion, to be honest. So, and quite a few of those who passed selection in the 1990s would not pass selection today. Again, I don't know what you base that on. I don't know anything about it. So yeah, it's cool. You've got your comments in that in here. Whereas the racing snake, in inverted commas, extremely lean, was that supposed to be little? Lithe muscle and bone was a huge advantage in Indochina and Africa, where heavyweight dudes suffered and were a liability. Today, the goal seems to be more muscle, as the body armor and loads are much bigger. No, I don't. That hasn't been my observation. I think there may be guys that are naturally just becoming maybe a little bit bigger. I don't know, maybe because of the diets and the food that we eat. But I've not heard of an increase in bigger candidates going on to selection. Not in New Zealand or Australia anyway. If that's the case, maybe it is, but I haven't heard of that. So you've got here, today the goal seems to be more muscle, as the body armor and loads are much bigger. Yeah. I've seen some very small guys, and large majority of unit members are smaller, leaner guys carrying equally the same amount of weight, if not more. than a perceived bigger person. I probably personally would have sat in that larger person framework, being typically at that time when I was in anywhere from 93 to 98 kilos. So I would have been in, one of the bigger, heavier guys, not bigger in terms of height, but just because I'm only 183 centimeters or 184 last time I did my height. Yeah, but I definitely was larger than a whole bunch of other guys that I was in the unit with at the time. The senior sport NCO of the Legion says, for him, the perfect size and weight of a commando is 1.75 to 1.80 meters, and is that meters? And about 75 kgs. So that's interesting, because I think there was somebody that put a comment on one of my videos about, is it Major Rennie? And during the early days in the development of the NZSAS. And I think he had a height and a weight restriction. I think the weight restriction might have been 80 kilos maximum. And the height might have been around about the same in terms of the height. So anyway, he says that may mean they can carry less weight, but they can march forever, climb and fit through every gap. There was also an interesting study by the French Army in World War I. They discovered that country boys had more resistance and were more able to suffer bad conditions, but city boys were fitter on an athletic level. Now, that's interesting. I did hear that in terms of even in NZ, those that came from a farming background, farming work is hard work. Early starts, long days, into the night, little food, just really laborious, but good work as well, like meaningful work. But it's hard work, so that's not surprising. City boys were fitter on an athletic level. Okay, yep, when you say athletic level, maybe that's the difference, but I think endurance-wise and all that sort of stuff, and like I said, putting up with stuff, that's probably where those from a rural farming background probably come into their own. Also depends very much on where you are deployed. Working with the Americans, there seems to have been a huge amount of food. I'm not sure what you mean by that there in terms of passing selection. Depends very much on where you are deployed. Working with the Americans, there seems to have been a huge amount of food. Unless you're talking about just the ability to function and work and not meaning anything to do with selection when you're talking about where you're deployed. Because that where you're deployed really, in my thought anyway, has nothing to do with the selection process, because you're going into an SF unit because you're ready, willing and able, and putting up your hand saying you can deploy me wherever you want if I'm successful in getting through the processes that I need to get through. Food of all kinds. Yep, there's no doubt that the US have plenty of food when they go out and about and they're around the traps. But with the French, you have food but no excess food, okay? And often in deployments to Africa where the guys were on long patrols, the group or section was given emergency rations and an allowance. With the allowance, they would buy food for the section in local villages, goats, chickens, etc. Okay, the guys could survive on a not excessive amount of food. All right. IMHO, in my honest opinion, the needs of the armies have changed. Yep, that's pretty well known. Yep, the needs and the tactics and everything, there's been lots of changes. Yep. The skinny, wiry guys who fought in the jungles of Indochina would suffer immensely under the weights carried by the guys today. That's a bold statement. I don't think so. Why? Because there's still plenty of small, skinny, wiry guys in the units today who carry the same amount of weight, who wear the same body armor, who carry the same frontline ammo, who either carry a machine, who might carry a machine gun, as opposed to oftentimes it would be seen as the machine gunner would be a bigger person. So yeah, I'm not sure what you're basing that on, but from my understanding on selection courses, vast majority of people are still pretty wiry, are still very lean and fit, and they're not big. They're not the big bodybuilder types. So yeah, that's just my thoughts anyway, but appreciate your time and your thoughts in here. And the guys today would not last long in the jungles of Indochina. Big call. I don't know about that. But yeah, appreciate your time and putting it in here anyway. Your sharing your comments and your input. Where are we? You know what? I'm just going to keep going till I finish off these. What have we got? We've got at Steve Lance, again, another supporter of the channel. Appreciate you, bro. What have we got here? Question 1 equals, if you have the mindset, of course. Yep. So that was in regards to that same Q&A from yesterday. Could I have passed the UKSF or Navy SEALs selection? And question 2 equals, when on ops with other nations, whether SF or not, lots of missions-specific training happens. Yep, lots of mission-specific training happens, so no need to spend any time even thinking about it. Okay, yeah, I'm not sure which part. That second part of the question was around should guys have to do the selection if they want to join another unit, I think it was. So yeah, okay. Cheers, Steve. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Don't spend, so no need to spend any time thinking about it. Okay, David. Oh yeah, Dave, mate. Good to see your channel growing, bro. At David6920. So this is David. What is it? Kiwi Outdoor Blades and Bullets. Kiwi Outdoor Blades and Bullets, or New Zealand Outdoor Blades and Bullets. His channel. Good to see your channel growing, bro. This guy has a master's degree in public speaking. That's the Hegseth speech. Viti Gamer 1053 in US. So this is in response to could I have passed that Q&A from yesterday. In US Green Berets, the dive teams are often seen as the best teams because they undergo a second selection, Special Forces Dive School. US Green Berets, the dive teams are often seen as the best teams because they undergo a second selection, Special Forces Dive School. This is compared to their Halo and Mountain teams. Is there any distinction like that for NZSAS or SASR troops? Or are all troops viewed equally? I think probably only internally. Yeah, no, they're pretty much the same. Like the selection course, you're going through a whole bunch of stuff. Interesting that you say the US Green Berets, the dive teams. From what I understand, the Tier 1 units in the US are Delta Force and Development Group. Like those are the two that are, from what I understand, I could be wrong, that are considered Tier 1. I've heard that they'll look to pull from or grab from, or there'll be a number of guys that have come through the Green Berets, Rangers and Green Berets and Navy SEALs, and apply for or get panelled for or go through the process to join a Tier 1 unit like Delta Force or Development Group. But yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about the US Green Berets and the dive teams being seen as the best teams. The two teams that I know of that are viewed as being the best in terms of American Special Forces is Delta Force and Development Group. Yeah, but if US Green Berets are viewed as that, based on what you've said, cool. Compared to Halo and Mountain teams, is there any distinction like that? NZSAS, Australian SAS, like they go through a whole bunch of different training, generalists with regards to a lot of the work that they do, but then you'll have some SMEs or subject matter experts within those relevant teams that may go away and get extra further training from other units in other countries that may have a specific capability, which is viewed, and highly regarded in terms of their ability and what they're able to do. But yeah, not that I'm aware of. If there's any rivalry, friendly banter, it would be internal within the troops, within the those units themselves. Hopefully that makes sense. What do we got here? At Colour of the Gods. My understanding is your NZ selection mirrors joint UK SF selection closely. No, it's pretty different. A number of Kiwis came over to the UK and redid the UK SF course. Amazing reputation. Thank you for your time. Yeah, like I'm biased, like the Kiwis, Australians, they got a great soldiering reputation, as do the British, right? So, and America, like I don't know much about Canada, but I presume they do as well. So the selection is very different. The New Zealand selection to the UK selection. in terms of what we call the selection. You're still being selected and assessed when it comes to the reinforcement cycle, but the selection piece is shorter in terms of if you're looking at the UK and comparing it to the UK selection overall. The actual selection piece of what New Zealand calls the selection is, yeah, it's like 10 days testing in comparison to the UK 6 months. So that's a huge difference there. But then the selection portion of NZ, if you successfully get through that and if you are able to progress on to the cycle, that cycle will be anywhere from 8 to 12 months, maybe longer, depending, then a probationary period once you get through that. So the cycle, you get through all the relevant courses on the cycle. If you've met all those requirements and you're fortunate to get badged, then you get badged. So that may be you've done a 10-day selection, then you've done an 8 to 12 month cycle, back-to-back courses. Then if you're fortunate and you've done all of that, then you get badged. Then you may be or more than likely be on a probationary period, which may be another 12 months to 18 months. But you're badged. You're in a unit now, and now you're learning the flow and the rhythm of things, improving your skills, etc. But you're still on a probation. And then even then, so you could still get a tap and be told to, be RTU'd, return to unit. Even after that, you're still the term daily renewable contract. You still need to turn up each day. You still need to put in the work. You still need to perform. So even once you've gone through the selection, gone through the cycle, been badged, serving with the unit, gone through probation, and you carry on, you could still be pulled out of the unit. There's no, not like in Civvy Street, there's no HR process to go through, or at least there wasn't anyway. Like if you're not meeting the standard and you're not performing, you'll probably get a bit of a tap on the shoulder, maybe a warning. And if you're still failing to meet it, well then, hey, you can't use you. If you're not fit and capable and able to be deployed and used for the job that you signed up for, well then there's not much point in you sticking around there if you're not able to do that, and or if you're not able to contribute. Different story if you're injured, you've spent a bit of time there, you've developed all this experience, knowledge, etc. But you're injured or whatever the case might be, and so you can't or whatever, but there's still a heck of a lot of knowledge and value and stuff there that potentially the unit may still want to keep and use so that it can be passed on to the next generations coming through. So there's pros and cons. The parts that I'm talking about is, more sort of performance based, and if you became lazy, for want of a better term, if you became slack, lackadaisical, and decided, I'm here now, I don't need to pull my weight, I can just cruise. Or then hopefully you don't ever feel like that, because then that's probably a good sign you should leave the unit anyway if you're starting to feel like that. So yeah, it is pretty different, the selection, in terms of that. And Australia's pretty similar again in terms of the cycle aspect, but again the selection is different to NZ and the UK. The selection that I did in Australia was 3 weeks, 21 days. Selection in NZ was 10 days. And then both New Zealand and Australia have a 12-month to 18-month or 8 to 18-month cycle process. And then, you go into the squadrons and that from there if you're fortunate to get badged, etc. So hopefully that helps at Colour of the Gods. I see Dr. Ian Plecht has jumped in here. I'm surprised to see Dr. Ian Plecht come back to the channel. I think I remember just laughing at some of his comments before when he was getting a bit antsy about a couple of things. But he's here, so all well and good. He's got here in response to at Colour of the Gods, it's not that close. New Zealand ruck marching phase, for example, is 3 days. UK SF Hills phase, the equivalent phase, is 4 weeks, for example. And those coming to the UK from NZ would be doing it for the first time, not redoing it. Yeah, you're right. I think I've spoken about that enough. Like even just now, again in this video, the selection, not including the pre-selection. So there's a little pre-selection piece which I usually forget to mention in the NZ selection, because it's not necessarily part of the testing, although you are still being assessed and evaluated during that pre-selection time. I think my pre-selection might have been 5 to 6 days long. It wasn't long. And then you roll straight into the actual testing, which was the 9 to 10 days. Australia, there was a barrier testing that we did. I think that barrier testing went for 3 days, the barrier test that I did. And then you go into the selection, which is 21 days. But there was like a pretty decent gap between the barrier testing, just to get selected to earn an opportunity to go on to the selection and then doing the actual selection. So yeah, there you go. At Colour of the Gods, you got a response there from Dr. Ian Plecht, and then you've got my 2 cents added in there with regards to the selections themselves. There's a few differences and stuff in there. Yep, that 4 weeks long, or maybe it's 5 weeks long. It might be 4 weeks plus another week as the testing in the UK. I don't know. But yeah, there's some. They're hard. Let's just put it that way. They're all hard. I don't care where you're from. I don't care what you've done. You're going to struggle and find it hard, whichever one you do. The fact that you've done a 3 or 4 week one or a 5 week one versus 3 days, the differences come down to what you're getting to fuel yourself with for that time and during those moments and the ground and the terrain that you cover. So it plays a part, and people will struggle regardless. So I don't care who they are, where they're from. At Paul McKenzie, last couple. I was fascinated by Bud's stories. I don't know how dudes can put up with all that BS, and the cold stories of the steel pier sound brutal. Yeah, man. I mean, they put up with a heck of a lot, eh? But I would say personally, it's not. It may seem like BS to those not serving in the military or those that have no desire to go and serve there in the first place, but it's part of the process. It helps those units identify who has what it takes and who you can trust and who you can rely on when times get hard, when you're out doing the job for real. So although it may seem like BS to others, and even those that are going through it might call it BS from time to time, those that get through it and pass, I would imagine, look back on that and go, it is 100% necessary. That's why we do it, because they can then connect it to the jobs that they've then gone on, likely been on and served on, and the situations that they've been in. So, and then Steve last on the final reaction to Hegseth's speech, he's just got good Lord. So anyway, cool. That took 42 minutes. Went through all the questions that I can see in the community section of my YouTube studio. Appreciate any and everyone who has taken the time to drop some comments, chuck in some questions for the for the kind words and for the queries. So hopefully that helps answer some of those questions. I'll probably just drop a quick reply to each of these ones that I haven't responded to and just say I've just done a Q&A for this. I'll put it out either later today or tomorrow, and then people can either tune in and listen to it or not. So anyway, once again, appreciate your time and your support as always. And with that being said, the message is the same. Any challenges, trials, difficulties that you may be going through, any hoo-ha nuisance things that are getting on your nerves and frustrating and just, maybe dragging you down to a degree, I just encourage you, man, just keep turning up, keep staying in the fight, put one foot in front of the other, take one day at a time. Know that it's okay to not be okay. Know that it's okay to ask for help, that you are not alone, that if you want it bad enough, things can do and will get better. The sun will shine again. There is a light at the end of that tunnel. So just stick at it. Keep fighting. As always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next video, there's a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you all.